This is the story about one of Canada's most notorious bikers, a man who led one of Hell's Angels chapters and unleashed a wave of terror across the city of Montreal. By the 1990s, he was considered one of the most powerful bikers in the province and was responsible for taking many lives during the Quebec Biker War. This is the story of Maurice Boucher. Maurice Boucher was born in 1953 and was raised in Montreal, Canada. His parents were originally from Consolidating, but they moved to Montreal when he was just 2 years old, seeking a better life in the city. Life at home was far from ideal for young Boucher, as he had 7 siblings, and his father, who worked as a construction worker, was reportedly a heavy drinker and abusive to his wife and children. In the 1960s and 1970s, Quebec's construction industry was under the grip of mafia-linked figures like André Desjardins, whose ruthless control extended over the construction union. And Boucher quickly learned that violence and corruption was accepted as normal. School was not a priority for Boucher. His report cards painted a picture of an indifferent student, and he dropped out of school in grade 9 to take up odd jobs. At the age of 19, Boucher went on to commit his first crime by stealing $200 from a local convenience store. Despite obtaining a certificate to work in construction, his heavy drinking and drug use led to his swift dismissal from his job within a week. These early experiences laid the groundwork for Boucher's path into a life of crime and conflict. As he navigated the streets of Montreal in 1974, he was very unhappy with his income, so he decided to turn to crime. That same year, he would be arrested for a few break-ins and served some time in detention. The very next year, in 1975, he went on to commit a more serious crime by going into a butcher's shop with a rifle to steal $138. He was quickly caught, which resulted in a 40-month prison sentence, and he was released in 1978. This was around the same time the Hells Angels expanded from New York and into Quebec, led by Yves Trudeau, or Apache. Within just 7 years, they were able to take over 75% of the drug trade in the city of Montreal, raking in around $2 million a month. In 1982, Boucher formed links with a white supremacist motorcycle gang named the SS. He became really good friends with a fellow member named Salvatore Cazzetta. The two became leaders of the group and operated in the Pointe-aux-Trembles district of Montreal. The SS weren't making any money as they were strongly opposed to non-white immigration and mainly focused on beating up immigrants. This was until one member by the name of Normand Hamel introduced the group to the drug trade. Boucher would go on to earn a reputation for his violent behavior and his ability to lead those around him. A commander of the Montreal police even said he's very intelligent in the way he runs people. He's got a very high leadership quality. If he were legitimate, he'd be a great manager for any business. He rules by fear. People respect him because they fear him. They don't respect him because he's respectable. Both Boucher and Cazzetta were soon being scouted for membership in the Hells Angels, and Boucher was even more convinced about joining after witnessing the Angels' ruthlessness during the Lennoxville massacre. In March 1985, the Montreal North Laval chapter of the Hells Angels was deemed problematic during a secret meeting. They were considered too wild and uncontrollable, suspected of excessive drug use, and accused of skimming drug profits meant for other chapters. 5 Laval chapter members were invited to a party in Sherbrooke, where they tragically lost their lives at the hands of fellow Hells Angels. 2 months later, divers located the bodies of the victims wrapped in sleeping bags and tied to weightlifting plates at the bottom of the St. Lawrence River. In September 1984, Boucher was convicted of armed sexual assault and was sentenced to only 40 months in prison. After finishing his sentence, he quickly joined the Hells Angels and quickly rose through the ranks. He wanted to take Salvatore Cazzetta with him, but he refused his offer, and instead he started the Rock Machine Motorcycle Club with his brother Giovanni in 1986. The Lennoxville massacre was too much for Cazzetta, and he believed that the ambush was an unforgivable breach of code. The Rock Machine MC started recruiting some of the best talent around and formed alliances with the Rizzuto crime family, the West End Gang, and the Dubois brothers. They were able to quickly earn a lot of drug market share in the Montreal area. In May 1987, Boucher officially joined the Hells Angels as a full member, just 3 days after a rival biker's lifeless body was found. It is believed he was involved in the incident to secure his membership. In the aftermath of the Lennoxville massacre, Yves Trudeau would go on to cooperate with the authorities, and his testimony led to the imprisonment of 39 angels. This prompted the national president of the Angels, Michel Langlois, to flee to Morocco to avoid charges. A leadership gap within the Hells Angels was created, which Boucher took advantage of to step into a more significant role in the organization, and he would become the Montreal South Chapter president by the end of 1987. In April 1988, Walter Stadnik would become the national president, and he appointed Boucher as his right-hand man. They would go around meeting leaders of other motorcycle clubs to force them to patch over, and those who refused would meet consequences. In 1988, the Vikings Motorcycle Club agreed to patch over to become the Hells Angels Quebec City chapter. However, the Outlaws Danville chapter refused, so Boucher ordered the Hells Angels to firebomb their clubhouse. The next day, Darky LeBlanc, the president of the Outlaws Danville chapter, met with Boucher and asked to defect. However, Boucher rejected him but told him he can work as an Angel associate, and LeBlanc would go on to serve as an Angel agent within the Outlaws. With his help, the Hells Angels were able to defeat the Outlaws, and on September 15, 1990, Claude Meunier, the president of Outlaws Montreal chapter, was assassinated in a drive-by shooting. After LeBlanc completed his task, both his lifeless body and that of his brother-in-law were discovered in the snow not far from the Angels clubhouse in Sorel. When Boucher was questioned by the police, he said that he has never met them. By the early 1990s, he was considered one of the most powerful bikers in the province, and he earned the nickname Mom for his attention to detail. He would always ask his men many questions and made sure that they were taking the proper steps before doing anything. One Hells Angel, who later turned Crown witness and testified at Boucher's trial, even said, "Monsieur Boucher was considered like a god. When I'd see other Hells Angels around him, they were full of admiration." On March 26, 1992, Boucher founded the Rockers Motor Club, acting as the Hells Angels Puppet Club in Montreal. The club was created to test the competence of bikers wanting to become angels, but it mainly served as a tool to carry out violent assaults and assassinations in an effort to help obtain total control over the drug trade. During that time, the Hells Angels and the Rock Machine were getting along, likely because of the friendly relationship between Boucher and Salvatore Casetta. However, things changed when Casetta was arrested in 1994 for conspiracy charges related to importing 200 kilograms of coke. With the Rock Machine left without a leader, Boucher saw a chance to weaken them. He took advantage of the situation by moving his puppet clubs into markets controlled by the Rock Machine. Most drug dealers and organized groups of Montreal banded together to found an alliance against the Angels. A big turf war erupted, and in 1994 alone, 20 lives were taken, and Boucher would pay up to $100,000 for executing a member of the Rock Machine. In 1995, Boucher decided to start a new Hells Angels chapter called the Nomads, which had no geographical limit and were to operate all over Canada. Only the Angels who had proven themselves could join, and the Nomads didn't hesitate to execute journalists, informants, or police officials. On August 9, 1995, just a few months after the Nomads were formed, a Jeep rigged with a remote-controlled bomb exploded, claiming the life of an innocent 11-year-old boy, Daniel Desrochers, who was playing in a nearby schoolyard. Boucher had devised a plan to sacrifice the life of a Hells Angel named Marc Dubé in order to turn public opinion against the Rock Machine, which resulted in a tragedy. Boucher had spies within the police, and he soon found out that there was a mole within the ranks of the Angels. To destabilize the system, he ordered the Angels to randomly start taking the lives of people associated with the justice system. His reasoning was that the Crown would refuse to negotiate with those involved in attacks against justice system affiliates. On June 26, 1997, Boucher ordered 2 prospects with the Nomads, Stéphane Gagné and André Tousignan, to take the life of prison guard Diane Lavigne. She was hit by a hail of bullets as she was returning home from her shift at Montreal's Bordeaux jail. A few months later, Stéphane Gagné, together with Paul Fontaine, gunned down the prison guard Pierre Rondeau and wounded another one as they were leaving the Rivière des Prairies prison. To get information about the executions, Commander André Bouchard ordered a series of raids on properties owned by the Hells Angels. In one raid, Bouchard even knocked out a Hells Angel who wanted to fight him and asked, "Anybody else want some?" after punching him out. Eventually, Stéphane Gagné was caught and turned Crown witness, naming Boucher as the mastermind of the 2 executions. Boucher was surprised that they let Gagné cut a deal after the 2 shootings, so in order not to take any risks, he decided that André Toussignan had to go, and very shortly he disappeared. On December 18, 1997, Boucher was arrested and charged for the slayings of Rondeau and Lavigne. During the trial, Hells Angels members reportedly paid spectators to give up their seats so that they could fill the first several rows and glare menacingly at the jury. One juror broke down in tears when the judge denied her request to be excused. Near the end of the trial, Boucher was so confident he'd get acquitted and that he'd be at Montreal's Molson Centre that Friday night for the middleweight boxing championship. Sure enough, the jury acquitted him, and 2 hours later, he accepted an ovation from the stadium crowd before taking his ringside seat. However, his luck was short-lived, as in the year 2000, a Montreal appeals judge decided that Boucher should be retried. The judge ruled that the previous trial in 1998 had problems, including jury intimidation and flawed instructions. Boucher was jailed, and around this time, police launched Operation Springtime, which saw the arrest of 142 bikers, including 80 of the 106 full-patched Hells Angels, almost the entire Nomad chapter, plus every member from the puppet clubs. At this point, the Quebec Biker War has been going on from 1994 to 2002. The conflict involved 80 bombings, and over 160 lives were claimed. This time, the Quebec authorities were taking no chances. After Operation Springtime, at a cost of $16.5 million, the province constructed a state-of-the-art courthouse especially for the Hells Angels trials with a one-way mirror that shielded the jury from view. After 11 days of deliberation by the jury, Boucher was found guilty on May 5, 2002. He received an automatic life sentence with no possibility of parole for 25 years. During his time at the Saint-Anne-des-Plaines Super Maximum Security Penitentiary, Boucher faced multiple assassination attempts. He was attacked twice with a homemade knife, and another time members of the Indian Posse attempted to assassinate him by firing a bazooka at his cell. In April 2014, it was reported that the Angels had expelled Boucher as he exhausted all legal recourses and he was no longer useful to the club. On the 10th of July 2022, Maurice Boucher passed away at 69 years old while receiving palliative care for throat cancer.